Okay, she be gone every single night. Day and night on my mind, pushing a cute vibe.
How's it going, everybody? This is Top Driver. Hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright, so I didn't realize this until just recently, but a couple days ago, it was the 50-year anniversary of perhaps one of the darkest moments in the history of my hometown here in Springfield, New Jersey. I'm talking about all the way back in 1972, where one very mysterious murder haunted the entire township of Springfield, and 50 years later, that still reverberates across the entire town and across Union County and the United States today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be talking about the murder of Jeannette DePalma, a woman from right here in Springfield, New Jersey that was murdered 50 years ago on August 7th, 1972. What happened that day and why that murder is still a mystery at this point, and why that murder still reverberates as one of the darkest mysteries in the United States today. So this is a mystery that has really reverberated across Springfield for such a long time. Jeannette DePalma, she was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, all the way back in 1956, and at the time of August 7th, 1972, she was 16 years old and was a student here in Springfield, New Jersey. Now, much was really not known about her life prior to that day. In fact, the only real thing that we really knew about her during that time was that she was just a student here in New Jersey. I don't know if it was up there at the Jonathan Dayton High School, but we do know that she was in high school during that time. So on the night of her murder, DePalma had told her mom that she was going to be leaving for the night to spend some time with her friend's house. Where that was, I really do not know. It probably could have been at another township, probably somewhere in Union, maybe in Melbourne or something like that. But for that night, she had decided that she was going to hang out with her friend for that night. And so she was going to leave the house, spend the night there, and maybe come back soon. However, a few days go by, and Jeannette DePalma had not been heard from again from her parents, nor has she come home. And there was a real worry that was going on within the DePalma family in regards to both her safety and her security in regards to what was going on. And so at that time, the family decided that they were going to file a missing person report to the local Springfield Police Department right here in Springfield and ask for an investigation in regards to what was going on during that time. What happened to Jeannette, I really personally do not know. She was supposed to go and see her friend, however, somewhere along the way, she just completely disappeared. And ultimately, it wasn't until a couple days later that this disturbing mystery took a very dark turn. Her remains were actually found nearby a quarry here in Springfield, and a dog had actually found her arm, in which she actually returned to her owner, and as a result, that led to a furious police report in which they actually went to that quarry and ultimately found the rest of her remains there, which were really decomposing by that time. Not only that, there was a lot of very disturbing conspiracies that actually went about in regards to that discovery. In fact, several have reported that, there was a lot of occult-like things that were actually surrounding her body when she was discovered. There was about a lot of the cult-like products that was going on there. There was a lot of, like crosses that were made off of tree branches, and there was even one conspiracy in which her body was actually found nearby a cliff nearby, in which it was reported at the time as the Devil's Teeth. It was known as that by some time from some of the residents here in Springfield, New Jersey. There were a ton of conspiracies that were going around during that time, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later on. So this investigation goes on for like several weeks. They're asking for a whole lot of tips. They're asking about exactly what happened, who possibly could have murdered her, and exactly what exactly happened the night of her murder. Now, there was this one person that they had actually discovered that was named Red, and that he may have had something to do with it. However, after an investigation of that, they found out that he had absolutely nothing to do, despite the fact that he had actually fled the town shortly after her murder. So was he really a part of the murder? I really don't know, but the police did not find Red liable for the situation. In fact, in the autopsy itself, they couldn't really figure out exactly what had happened. They couldn't find any evidence of, if it was like a bullet wound in her, or if there was some sort of like injuries around there, or no broken bones, something like that. There was really no certain injury or illness that had been seen in her body that could have led to her death. The only possible explanation that the police could give in regards to what happened to her murder was that it was a possible strangulation. So ultimately, they were continuing this investigation for a few more weeks, something like that. However, after all the tips went cold, everything just completely dried tied up. The investigation ultimately went nowhere. It was basically stopped cold in its tracks, and basically it was just shut down from there. There was basically nothing that they could do in regards to it. This was just too deep of a mystery for them to solve, and to this day, this mystery of how Jeannette DePalma was murdered has not been solved. In the years since, it has gained a lot of national attention. It has been in several reports, including NJ.com, the Star-Ledger, New York Daily News, and a whole lot of those big newspapers in regards to her disappearance and her murder. It was also in a whole bunch of books as well. And in fact, just earlier this weekend, in fact, last weekend actually, they actually held a memorial service at the front lawn of Springfield Town Hall, doing like sort of a memorial of Jeannette DePalma's life and talking about her disappearance and her murder. I was not a part of that, I was actually right here at home, but hey, they did a little service in regards to that, talked a little bit about that, and they still made it clear that they still want to solve this mystery 50 years later. And so obviously they're still asking for a whole lot of tips in regards to exactly what could have happened, and maybe at some point they might be able to finally solve the issue of what actually happened to Jeannette DePalma. But until then, it does not look like it is going to be a mystery that is going to be solved anytime soon. So why am I talking about this now? Well, because it is 50 years now since the day of the disturbing, mysterious murder that took place right here in Springfield Township 50 years ago. It is still talked about as an urban legend here across Springfield Township, and it's really a disturbing event that many people that were around during that time were still completely haunted by. And if you remember about that time, there was still a lot of fear that was going around in Springfield, along with the majority of Union County and northern New Jersey, especially since they were just coming off of the serial killings from murderer named Tom Lewis. That's really put a lot of fear in a lot of residents here in New Jersey, and they feared that something like this could very well happen again. Was it a serial killer? I really don't know, but up to this point, Red was really the only guy in 1972 and now during that time that was even thought of potentially having had some sort of role in her murder. But there are still a lot of very disturbing things about this murder that makes me feel a little disturbed about this case in general. The first thing about that is that there are a lot of conspiracy theories that are still centered around her murder. Obviously, a lot of it involves a lot of like Satanism and like occult-like things that were discussed in regards to her murder. Like as I said before, and the police found her remains, it was surrounded by a bunch of like crosses or tree branches that were made into crosses or something like that. And there were a lot of occult products that was around her as well. I don't know if a Ouija board was one or something like that, but when you come across something like that, it makes you feel like that there's some sort of like like witchcraft or like Satanism that took place or something like that. And 1972, that was not common at all. In fact, it would feel like that it would take place more in a fairy tale than it would be in real life. That is really disturbing. In fact, I don't really know what the quarry is right now, or exactly where that quarry is. I mean, maybe it might be nearby from where I usually walk whenever I go out on my daily walks, but at that time, it was such a disturbing discovery that the police have made. And there have been a lot of conspiracy theories that, it may have been some cult that actually caused her murder. They may have found her, they dragged her, bullied her and all that stuff, and using a whole lot of like that witchcraft and all of these like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. They basically tortured her to the point of murder, and ultimately, like put her some sort of like human sacrifice or something like that. And that's the next thing too, several of those theories also allege that it may have actually been a human sacrifice, that maybe when that cult found her, there was some sort of like case that they were trying to do, in which like there was something that could be disturbingly wrong in the future, and so the only way to stop that, at least in their minds, was to murder someone, so that way it could be a sacrifice made to protect their colony and ultimately protect their future. I have absolutely no idea in regards to that. Again, this is just something that I have read off online, and this is what a lot of people in Springfield, New Jersey have talked about, but that in turn is just completely disturbing in my opinion. In fact, it is really one of the most disturbing things that I would have even thought of in regards to a murder. And yeah, there are just a whole bunch of theories that are taking place in regards to her murder, I just find it really, really disturbing that 50 years later, all of these theories about what happened with Jeannette DePalma and, all of these theories that it may have been some sort of cult or maybe like Satanism or, something that was really disturbing that was led to her murder. I really don't exactly understand, how exactly this is still occurring and why the police have not been able to solve this case. I mean, I still have hope that they can somehow figure it out. They said that they were still trying to figure this case out alone, but, during the time that the murder actually happened, I mean, it was such a disturbing occurrence that happened, and up to this point, it has led to real revelations across Springfield Township and all of northern and central New Jersey, and they still remain to this day. So yeah, you can figure of all you want exactly what happened to Jeannette DePalma, how she was murdered, and basically how she was discovered or something like that. I mean, it's just really disturbing to think about all these thoughts. I mean, if I could have taken a time portal and taken myself all the way back to the night of August 7th, 1972, right here in Springfield Township, and just figure out exactly what she was doing. I should be there with her and see exactly what happened myself. If I had the ability to do that, I would. And really, I probably would have been a lot more disturbed at that time than I would be right now. But you know what? If I had the ability to go back to see exactly what happened, I would. But I can't. There is no way to actually travel back in time to stop that from happening or to figure out exactly what happened. So, we're basically just forced to leave with our best guess in regards to exactly what happened to her. And for right now, the only possible case is that this was a possible case of strangulation. But again, all of these conspiracy theories that have been circulating around DePalma in recent years, it's just really made this one of the most disturbing cases, not just in New Jersey, but here in the United States. But yeah, 50 years later, there is still really talked about as one of the most darkest moments that have ever taken place here in Springfield Township and all of New Jersey as well. Jeannette DePalma at 16 years old, for her to be murdered at that young age during that night, and the possibility of all of these theories around that, it may have been because of some sort of cult or some sort of like deep disturbing conspiracy theory or something like that. That's something that still haunts all of this town today. And the more and more that I have read into this, the more and more disturbing it gets, in my opinion. I mean, really, you cannot think of a murder that was as disturbing during that time in the Northeast or across the United States as was the murder of Jeannette DePalma. I mean, trust me, it is really scary. And I also just have to think about the DePalma family themselves, like her mom, her parents, all of her friends, if any of them were still alive today, exactly, like how they're feeling now, 50 years later, after everything that happened during that night, how they're feeling. I'm sure that they are still haunted just as much as the rest of Springfield Township is during that time. And, I just have to feel for them that, like 50 years later, this mystery has still not been solved. And it doesn't look like it's going to be solved anytime soon. I can just only feel for them right now during this time. I mean, I don't know if they still live here in New Jersey, but if they do, I really would like to talk to them exactly, like how they're feeling now and, what their thoughts are in regards to their future and their thoughts on the night that Jeannette DePalma was murdered, because, it is still a very disturbing mystery. And, I just really feel for them and her friends as well, because I can't imagine how much they are feeling right now, especially after what happened 50 years ago. Folks, there are a lot of mysteries here in this world and in the United States that are extremely disturbing. There are a lot of mysteries that get so deep and disturbing that it makes you feel really haunted. It makes you really feel like that this will only happen in some sort of like nightmare or like a fairy tale or something like that that went horribly wrong. This was one of those cases where it fell right into that. The Jeannette DePalma murder on August 7, 1972 is perhaps the darkest and probably one of the most disturbing things to have ever happened here in Springfield Township and across New Jersey. And up to this point, they're still looking into this. They're trying to figure out exactly what happened 50 years later, and just to look back on it now and see how it has transformed to this moment today is still such a very disturbing moment. moment, and it is really something that still I personally just cannot get off my mind after reading so much about this over the last few months. So yeah, if you're the parent of a young one that plan to go out during at night, just make sure that you care for them as much as you can. Give them a hug, give them a kiss, just show that you care about them and you love them, because you never know exactly what will happen next. This is like I talked about when I talked about the death of my friend Tito Caballero. I spent as much time as I possibly could with him, and then one day he was gone. He passed away, and I just felt real devastated. So, as I mentioned, just be with them, love them as much as you can, because you'll never know exactly what might happen next. And it could end up exactly like what happened with Jeannette, which, trust me, would be the one thing that we all would not want today. An exact repeat of what happened 50 years ago with Jeannette DePalma. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully this case ends up being closed soon, and we can finally figure out exactly what happened that night, and hopefully put this case to rest once and for all. But I will tell you this, 50 years later, and even exactly after what happened that night, it is still a murder that has haunted all of my hometown here in Springfield Township, and the murder of Jeannette DePalma is probably going down as one of the most disturbing murder mysteries in the history of the United States. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this because, it's just real disturbing how 50 years later, all of these theories about how she was murdered are still playing out, the fact that this is still going on right now. So I would like to talk to you, those that have lived in Springfield during that time or still live there now, or those that have heard about this. What do you think about this? What do you think happened to Jeannette DePalma, and where do you think this ends up now? Feel free to let me know down in the comments, and I'll be more interested in hearing your opinions about it. I know there are a lot of theories that are out there in regards to what happened that night that I'm pretty sure you might have as well. So I'll be more than interested in hearing them as well. Alright, that's going to do it for this rather disturbing video, but I do hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my videos, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. As always, comment below for future suggestions for all my videos, whether it's vlogs, projects, or challenges, you name it, leave it in the comments below and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media, all the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for another midweek upload. Hope you're having another great day. And as always, I hope to see all of you again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.